Welcome to the Business of Biotech. This is a really special episode for me that I've been looking forward to for a long time, and that's because my dear friend and dear colleague, the brilliant and lovely Erin Harris, is joining me today. Erin, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so I got to thank you before we move on for continuing to risk your professional credibility by partnering with me on projects like this. Erin is, for those of you who don't know, she's the editor at Cell Gene, and she's joining me on today's episode because this is the kickoff episode of a mini series that Erin and I are putting together on Cell Gene technologies, and it's our intent over the course of the next few weeks to interview leaders of cell and gene companies who are kind of making waves and shaping the space as it evolves. We're going to explore these companies, where they fit in the landscape, what problems they're aiming to solve, and importantly, the technology and bioprocessing strategies that they're employing to reach their goals. So all that being said, we're honored and thrilled today to have one of those leaders with us right now, and Dr. Carsten Brunn, President and CEO at Selecta Biosciences. Dr. Brunn did some time in the pharma big leagues after earning his PhD in chemistry from the University of Hamburg. I'm exercising my German chops here.
Excellent.
He held positions with global responsibilities at Eli Lilly, Novartis, Bausch & Lomb, and ultimately took on the role of President of the Americas at, well, I think we pronounce it Bayer, but you would say Bayer.
Excellent. Yes, you're absolutely right, Matt.
Dr. Brunn, thank you for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Matt. And your German pronunciation is outstanding. I'm impressed.
Oh, I've only just begun. To embarrass myself with the German. So I've got to start the conversation with this question, Dr. Brunn. You're president of the Americas at Bayer, and that's by anyone's kind of position, that's a very safe place to be. It's a safe place to be. It's a good place to be at your point in your career. Why take the risk on Selecta?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. I think life is not always about being in a safe place. It is, what difference you want to make in the world. And I was, as you said in the intro, my background actually is in science, even though I worked the majority of my career on the commercial side. Prior to moving back to the US, I was in Japan for 4 years and very much involved in early science. Actually, we were one of the first companies to set up an open innovation center in Japan with the University of Kyoto. We worked with Professor Yamanaka, who won the Nobel Prize for his work on iPS technology induced pluripotent stem cells. So I was, always very interested on the science side. And moving to the US role, we actually do have Bayer had a open innovation center in Cambridge, where I got quite involved with a number of companies and realized, this work is a lot closer to the science. It's a lot closer to patients, and you can actually make, a bigger difference as the organizations are smaller. It's faster decision making, and that really, got me to rethink kind of my priorities and I decided to move back. And I haven't always worked in big organizations. I worked in a small biotech before in Switzerland, actually, and I worked in a privately backed company, mid-sized, Bausch & Lomb. So I wasn't always with the large companies, but I've always enjoyed the entrepreneurial side of things. And I think even my time when I was, and as you said, I did time when I was in big pharma, I never had the typical big staffs, and I always worked very, very pragmatic, not very bureaucratic. And so the transition actually was fairly easy, but it was really to be closer to science, be closer to patients, and have an impact. So it was a fairly easy decision to make, to be honest.
Yeah, was the move? So aside from moving from big to small, was there an element of the move that was a little bit riskier, different for you, given your move into like a concerted move into cell and gene?
Yeah, so definitely, moving to biotech is always risky. And actually, when I joined Selecta, I joined in a little bit of a difficult situation where we had quite a financial overhang. So we had to refinance the company. We had to look at the strategy again. At the time, we're positioned as almost like a gout spec farm company and not as a high science company, coming out of MIT and Harvard. So there's quite a bit of work that needed to be done. And there's always the risk to run out of money. So yeah, you financially, you take financial, risk, obviously, but it's also extremely rewarding if you're able to turn around and have an impact, actually. So yes, there is risk, but I think it's very calculated. Obviously, one of the reasons I joined Selecta, it's a platform technology which is applicable very broadly. Very strong science foundation, very strong team. So I think it was a calculated risk. But yeah, there is risk moving to a small organization. If you're a big pharma, a cash runway is not something that you talk about.
Sure. Dr. Brunn, this is Erin. I know I'm not on video, but hopefully you guys can hear me just fine. I don't know or have never taken a lick of German, so please excuse me as I try to pronounce some of these words. But interestingly enough, regarding Selecta, certainly wanted to get into the real nitty gritty of the science into the gene therapy with which you're working. Talk to us a little bit about specifically the immunogenicity of the AAV vectors challenge that gene therapy companies are facing. What is it, what's going on, and what solutions are out there specifically as Selecta is addressing it?
Yeah. So, gene therapy has made tremendous progress, right? There was a lot of question marks in the past, and I think there's a number of products on the market. There's been a lot of M&A activity, so it's kind of gotten mainstream in a sense, also big pharma getting in this business. And what has emerged, at least for in vivo applications, that AAV vectors are used primarily in vivo. And they are highly immunogenic, which means that if a patient's exposed to the AAV capsid 1s, they develop very high titers of neutralizing antibodies, which means they cannot be given a second dose, right? And AAV vectors are actually not self-replicating. That means they dilute over time, and you lose, in simple terms, you lose the therapeutic benefit over time as well, and you cannot give a second dose currently. So that's really one of the key limitations, actually, with AAV vectors, that you have such high titers of neutralizing antibodies that you can dose a second time once the expression of the transgene goes down. And that need we're trying to address with our technology.
Great. Okay. And where who specifically is receiving this treatment? Where are we with the trials? Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Yeah,
so maybe I step back a little bit. In terms of Selecta itself is an immune tolerance platform company. So we apply our technology, which is called ImmTOR, to a number of different areas. So we actually have already one asset in a different area in phase 3 clinical trial. So there's quite a bit of safety data available already. But specifically for gene therapy, we are in the preclinical phase. We have, I would say, fairly compelling data in rodents and non-human primates, where we were able to show that if you combine our platform technology with an AAV vector, you're able to prevent the formation of those neutralizing antibodies, basically, that make it impossible to give a second dose. And we've also demonstrated that we can give a second dose and express the transgene. So for us, really, the next step is to go into the clinic, and we plan to dose the first patient in the first half of 2021, so next year. We plan to file an IND in Q1, the first quarter, and then dose the first patient in the second quarter in a rare disease called MMA, which is a methylmalonic acidemia, which is a rare inborn metabolic disease that affects kids. So that's really the big next step for us to actually get into clinical proof of concept. But I think the advantage we do have is that we have over 200 patients dosed already with a technology in a different indication, which just gives actually a good safety database.
Dr. Brunn, the ImmTOR platform, as I understand it, I mean, it's your intention to make this platform available to, any number of gene therapy companies that face this AAV vectors challenge. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
So what are the what's that market look like from a size of market standpoint for Selecta? I mean, is the world kind of your oyster right now? Are there a whole bunch of companies out there that you could partner with to move this thing forward, or is the market limited based on the specific indications that these challenges are?
No, so I mean, you face those challenges in most gene therapy indications. There might be a couple of exceptions. If you look at gene therapy in the eye, that's an immune privileged space, so there is not really a need for this. But in I would say in all the liver-based diseases, at least, which many of those diseases are liver-based, or neuromuscular disorders, so it's a pretty big market, and pretty much every company that's using AAV is basically experienced this. Now it's interesting when you have some of the other folks on this show in the next couple of weeks. It'll be interesting to see their level of acknowledgement, because oftentimes in the past it was more, can we make this work? Yes or no? And the answer is yes. So gene therapy works. But now there's a couple of limitations, and one is that you can redose actually. So, and I think gene therapy companies have been somewhat slow to accept that. But I mean, there have been a couple of, I think, wake-up calls from the FDA as well. BioMarin, for example, received a complete response letter on their Hem A product due to durability issues, which shows that it's really on the radar of the FDA as well. And if you look at the FDA gene therapy guidance, I mean, they're pointing out that durability is something that needs to be addressed clearly.
Mm-hmm. Those of you on video may have noticed me smirking just a minute ago. That's because for the second time today, while recording a podcast, our fire alarms have decided to go off in the building. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Miles and I here in the studio are going to press on as if you can't, and I'm going to assume that our engineers can remove that sound in post-production, so we will move forward. But I apologize for that disruption.
Not a problem. Actually, I can't hear, to be honest.
I'm glad to hear that.
We cannot hear anything. Dr. Brunn, I have a question for you. As you go forward, so on Cell and Gene, we talk quite a bit about manufacturing. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that plays into exactly what you're doing with ImmTOR, and just educate us a little bit about the manufacturing side of this?
Yeah, no, Erin, manufacturing is critically important, right? And it's oftentimes the bottleneck for especially small companies. They got a great technology, but you can't manufacture it. So we're somewhat lucky in that respect. Actually, our first employee, Lloyd Johnston, who is our head of manufacturing, he really scaled up the process to manufacture ImmTOR to commercial scale already. So we developed the process in-house. We have it outsourced now to a CMO commercial scale. That manufacturing now for the phase 3, we're running in a different indication. So that's absolutely critical. Obviously, we don't have gene therapy manufacturing, so we're looking for companies to provide this. And a number of the companies we have partnerships with actually do have in-house manufacturing. But for the ImmTOR side of things, we do have this process scaled up, and as you said, it is critically important. And the nanoparticles that ImmTOR is comprised of are quite tricky to manufacture. So and having a well-established process is critical to move this into the clinic and then all the way to approval, obviously.
The Business of Biotech is brought to you in partnership with Cytiva. Together, we're committed to helping the leaders of new and emerging biopharma companies navigate the financial, organizational, human resources, and regulatory waters you'll encounter on your way from discovery to the clinic and beyond. Check out a host of useful resources for biotech leaders at Cytiva's Emerging Biotech Accelerator at cytivalifesciences.com/emerging biotech. That's CYTIVA lifesciences.com/emerging biotech.
Sure. The well-established process that you just mentioned, to date, what would you say are the top components of that process? Have you perfected it? And if not, as you move into your next steps, as you mentioned in 2021, throughout Q1, is there anything that needs to change or to be, progressed a little bit? Where are we with that?
Yeah, so I make this sound so easy. This was a lot of trial and error, and this was actually before I joined, just to get a formulation to work and then scale it up. Obviously, is tremendous work. But the process actually is already scaled up. So we actually are manufacturing already ImmTOR for the phase 3. And are also now, it's more regulatory work now to get this, FDA certified, if you like, full GMP. Sure. But the actual process has been completed, and I make it sound very simple, and it took many years actually to perfect this, but it is critical to the success of our business model that we're able to manufacture actually ImmTOR in a reproducible fashion.
Dr. Brunn, as you move forward, I mean, you could conceivably find yourself in like multiple clinical scenarios at the same time, right? As you partner with more gene therapy companies, make your technology available to the broader market. Do you anticipate any scale-up challenges as it relates to that? I mean, as I said, as the space expands, so too could ImmTOR and Selecta at pace.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I always say partnerships are like marriage, right? They require a lot of work, and it doesn't matter whether it's a large, like we have a large licensing deal with our partner Sobi, or you have a smaller, just a research collaboration. They actually do take a lot of work. We are a fairly, I would say, nimble and small company. We're about 40 folks at the moment. And it does indeed take quite a lot of time to manage those relationships, partnerships. And there's obviously tremendous complexity once you are in the clinic. And we actually, which is a little bit unusual, we out-license our gout asset, which is a combination of ImmTOR with a highly immunogenic enzyme, to Sobi for commercialization, but we actually are running the phase 3 on their behalf. So we actually are running a international phase 3, 2 phase 3 trials right now, which is quite a task for a smaller organization. And the more partnerships you have, the more complexity you have. So I think you have to be very mindful, what kind of partnerships you want to get into, and be very clear up front that you have the bandwidth to manage them.
Do you anticipate that being the case, that as you move into more clinical engagements with more of your partners, that you'll be directly involved in running the clinical trials?
Yeah, I mean, not always. To give you an example, I mean, we start a partnership with Selecta in June this year. And we, all the work we have done so far was in liver-based diseases, and Selecta, obviously being a leader in neuromuscular disorders, want to try whether ImmTOR works also in neuromuscular disorders like DMD or certain types of limb-girdle. So they're actually going to do the majority of the work. So we only provide ImmTOR, and they do the actual lab work. But it still requires, there are still coordination meetings, and you want to make sure that ImmTOR is used in the right context as well. You don't want to have a safety issue come up. So, but you're right. I mean, we're not always in a driver's seat to actually execute the trials. But as I said, I mean, even those partnerships where you don't actually do the work in the lab, they still require quite a bit of management attention and coordination work.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you look for beyond a good I guess, technical or scientific match? What do you look for in a partner?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. And obviously, I mean, you're looking for a good fit from a technology perspective. But really, what it boils down to is the personal relationships. It's really, as I said up front, like in the marriage a little bit. I mean, you want to make sure that you actually work well together, because companies have different cultures, very different sizes. I mean, Sarepta is a fairly large biotech. We're fairly small, and so I think that's an important consideration. Is there a good cultural fit? And I can give you a great example, actually. I mean, it's amazing the deals you can get done during times of COVID via Zoom. Actually, I mean, the licensing deal for our lead asset with Sobi was completely done via Zoom, right? And but even there, it's extremely important that you build a relationship of trust, and I think that component is critical. It is more than upfronts and contractual considerations. I think there are plenty of partnerships out there that should be theoretically successful, but they're not, because the two companies don't work well together. So we always have it as a key consideration, especially as a small company. It is critical for us that we do have a good working relationship, because we don't have the infrastructure to manage this. Large organizations have alliance managers and large BD teams. With us, we have a small program management function, and the CFO and myself oftentimes do manage the relationships.
Yeah. Zoom has been, it's sort of a love-hate relationship. Like, I'm sure Erin is cursing Zoom out right now because we lost our connection with Erin on Zoom today. But at the same time,
I know.
Yeah.
Our kickoff interview, and I'm only on audio, but that's okay. So Dr. Brunn, in addition to Sarepta, what are some of the other gene therapy companies that you're collaborating with, and what are you working on together with them?
Yeah, so we have a pretty broad partnership with AskBio, which was a leading private gene therapy company based in North Carolina, founded by Jude Zamalski, one of the pioneers in gene therapy. They got recently acquired by my old company, actually, by Bayer.
Yeah, that was like one of the. Was that not like the largest cell and gene acquisition? Like in his, there was a giant acquisition, wasn't it? Big money.
Yeah, I don't think it was the biggest, but it was. I mean, $4 billion is a sizable acquisition price, obviously, so. Yeah, it's ironic a little bit that we have a partnership now with Bayer, actually, even so AskBio is and the acquisition is not through, obviously. But so we have two partnerships with AskBio. One is a straight licensing deal where we gave exclusive rights to ImmTOR for AskBio's lead indication in Pompe disease. And the reason why this is a classical licensing deal, I mean, this is already actually in the clinic. So this was more, that train left the station to really partner 50-50. But we also have a true strategic partnership where we share, all the costs, and we plan to co-develop and co-commercialize a number of indications, and the first being MMA, which I mentioned earlier. And what makes AskBio a great partner is that they actually do have in-house manufacturing, and that oftentimes is a bottleneck. And I'm sure you'll hear this in the next couple of weeks, that manufacturing in gene therapy is on a critical path. And then they also have a best-in-class capsid library, and their tech, their IP has been pretty much in every approved product to date. So they're a great partner, and that's a pretty broad partnership, as I mentioned, and it is now with Bayer. We'll have to see how this is going to evolve. I've been assured that there are no short-term kind of implications, and obviously, like often in those cases, AskBio is run at arm's length, obviously, to not lose the innovative character and the fast and the speed of decision making. But I would say that's a very important partnership for us, as we'll have the first patient dose next year and also have data as a human proof of concept. That's really a critical partnership for us.
Sure. As beyond AskBio, as you look into the future here, are you looking for, or do you need additional partnerships? And if so, what are you still looking to? Who are you still looking to, if you can name them, and if not, that's okay. But how are you going to round this out, basically?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can't comment on any kind of BD activities, but I think it's important that obviously it's always desirable to have your own products from a value creation for a biotech. So we do have a proprietary program in that it's wholly owned in OTC deficiency, which is another rare inborn metabolic disease in kids. And so there's definitely, a desire to have our own products and potentially even license some products in as well down the line. But partnerships are critically important, obviously, as a platform company. You can pursue everything. We would like to pursue indications where we think there's a great fit, like a rare indication where we can develop this either by ourselves or with a partner like an AskBio. But of course, there's also the opportunity to partner with larger company as well, and that's like we've done with Selecta. I mean, we've kind of partnered with the leader in the neuromuscular space. So I think business development will be always as part of the equation. But we don't want to be a partnered-only company either. So we definitely want to retain rights to indications that we feel are interesting for us, of high value, and that we can commercialize ourselves as well. I think that's important.
It sounds like you're buttering both sides of the bread there, Dr. Brunn. I like it. I like it.
Trying, Matt, trying.
Partner with companies. I mean, what a fortuitous time to partner with Ask in advance of that Bayer acquisition, which was such a testament to the value of this space, I think, to bio moving forward. It's an incredible time, and your company's in an incredible place, I think, on the landscape. Take advantage.
Yeah, I think we're in a unique position for now. That's right. But biotech lives with data, so we'll have to generate data now to show human proof of concept. But we are indeed, I think, well positioned to leverage our technology and make a real impact in gene therapy. I mean, we're not a classical gene therapy company, but we can really, help transform and ensure that more patients can benefit from gene therapy.
Yeah, indeed. Yep. What's the next big step for Selecta? We're running short on time here, so I want to give you an opportunity to give us some concluding thoughts on what's next for Selecta and where you're headed from here.
Yeah. So obviously our next big thing is gene therapy and generating data. I think that's really the next big thing for us. And 2021 is going to be a critical year for us, where we are, hopefully by the end of the year, knock on wood, we'll have some initial data. So that's really big for us. And that opens up a lot of, different avenues for us in terms of partnerships, having our own products. I would say that's very important, but also, being a platform company, and we didn't talk really about a lead asset, which is in chronic affected gut, obviously a very different area, but there we have demonstrated that we're able to combine a highly immunogenic enzyme with ImmTOR, which means this enzyme you can give alone, basically, and with ImmTOR, it's tolerated and you can give it over a couple of months. And we're trying to replicate this now in additional indications. So we're also excited to combine ImmTOR with an IgA protease, which is a bacterial protease, also highly immunogenic, which we intend to use to treat IgA nephropathy, which is a significant unmet medical need. Very similar principle to our first asset in gout. In gout, you're basically trying to debulk patients of zero uric acid deposits they have in tissue. In IgA nephropathy, you're trying to basically debulk patients of IgA1 deposits in the kidney, actually. So it's very similar. So that's big for us as well, to really transfer the learnings that we had onto other therapeutic areas. And we're also expanding into autoimmune diseases as well. So we are trying to address indication, liver-based indication, primary biliary cholangitis, we're basically trying to restore tolerance to an autoantigen. So that's basically the next step, almost the holy grail in immunology. You're trying to restore self-tolerance of the body to something where you developed an autoimmune disease. But that's a bit further down, obviously. I mean, in terms of real clinical milestones, it's gene therapy, it's IgA nephropathy. And as I said in the intro, as a biotech, you're always judged by your run rate. And through the deal with Sobi, we actually do have cash to execute all those programs into early 2023. So the next year is going to be critical for us and transformational for us.
I'd say, I mean, well positioned in that, I haven't been around the block too many times in my role here, but I've been around the block enough times to have picked up on the value of diversity, breadth, and having many shots on goal. And it sounds like your company is certainly well positioned in that manner.
We sure hope so, yeah. I mean, as I said, obviously we're going to be judged by our data at the end, but we're very excited for the year to come. Cool.
We'll be paying attention. We'll be watching, and I'm sure you'll want to pay attention to this mini-series too, because we're going to be talking to a whole bunch of super interesting cell and gene companies that might be of interest.
I'll be following indeed, yes, for sure.
Dr. Brunn, it's been a pleasure to have you and an honor, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for having me on your first edition of this. Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's Erin Harris and Dr. Carsten Brunn. I'm Matt Pillar. This is the Business of Biotech. We're produced by Bioprocess Online and sponsored by Cytiva, which offers a ton of resources for new and emerging biotechs at cytivalifesciences.com/emerging biotech. Check us out at bioprocessonline.com. In the meantime, thanks for listening.